Welcome to the Quest for Quality podcast with keynote speaker Joe Higgins.
In terms of Quest for Quality, this is really about living a quality life, having a quality career. If you always aim for quality in your life, you will almost always find success at some point in the longer term.
For decades, Joe has shared his Quest for Quality message with thousands of business professionals across the country.
Some of you may know our keynote speaker. I would tell you he's a legend in the industry, and it's great to see him back with us.
I've had the privilege and honor introducing some very famous speakers to you. They were all great speakers and showed you how a winning attitude brings success. But our next speaker is even better. Joe Higgins has walked in our shoes. Joe's the only speaker in our history that we've invited to talk to us 2 years in a row.
The Quest for Quality podcast presents a universal message under the umbrella of 4 areas of Joe's unprecedented experience and expertise. Leadership, building healthy teams, customer service, understanding the American economy.
I'm trying to let people get that message that it's taken me 40 years to learn. I've had a lot of experience. I've gone through major levels of an organization, have trained and worked with and supervised thousands of people over my career and created leaders at the Whirlpool Corporation today that are running the company. So hopefully what I bring here in this thing is allowing people to live a better life and a better quality of life.
Thanks again for joining us for another edition of Quest for Quality with Joe Higgins. My name's Tim, and appreciate you taking the time to subscribe to this podcast and learn more about the various principles that you can apply in your personal and your business life to help grow your organization and help you on your very own quest for quality. In past episodes, we've talked about the American economy. Also, we just wrapped up a series on leadership. We're going to talk about customer service within an organization, building healthy teams within an organization, and now we're going to start a brand new series on creating a high-performance culture. It synergizes with your leadership presentation as well, too. But as a leader and as a businessman, how do you, Joe Higgins, define culture?
Well, there's a lot of definitions. If you go online, you could find 100 definitions for culture. The easiest one I found was actually in the dictionary. An integrated pattern of human behavior, meaning that it's connected, that human behavior is connected throughout an organization, that includes thought and speech. And I talked about how important speech was, the ability to speak to a team and make a team, motivated, want to act on what it is you say. And then the thought that we have, the thought that's in our head, what's in our head that creates the culture, down below us. It depends on those in the culture for learning and transmitting knowledge to succeeding generations that come along. I always tell businesses that what you think about, what's in your head, and what flows out of your head to your sales team, your delivery team, your administration team, whatever you have in your company, that's what creates the culture. And you got to really be careful how it is you behave and act and what you think about, because that's what your organization will become in the longer term. When you look at culture and what it is, it's really what's allowed our species to thrive. Think about a time in our history when we finally ended our nomadic ways and we settled down with agriculture and commerce. We began wearing clothes and got into warm housing, things like that. That allowed us then to record our knowledge for future generations. And as we began to record our knowledge, we became much more successful as a species. And that's what distinguishes us from other animals and any other living things on the planet. That's what culture is. Once culture develops, it allows that society to grow and change and be better at what they're doing. And there are all kinds of different cultures, within America and all over the world, and even within communities themselves. It doesn't matter what it is. There are all kinds of different cultures.
And you could break it down even further. Of course, every family is its own culture. Every Little League team or every Little League organization can be a culture. And of course, within your organization in your professional life as well.
And no doubt that every organization, every family, everything in America has a culture. Your church, for example. We have churches in the Northeast where people sit quietly and listen to a pastor preach. We have churches in the South where people sing and dance and play music all 1 hour, 2 hours long, whatever it is. Every bank has a culture. Have you ever been to a bank where they have, for example, a plexiglass front and you can't talk to the tellers except through a microphone because of robberies that happened in the past? I bank at a place where I can sit next to the teller. I could reach over if I wanted to grab the money and grab it right out of the till. Every bank has a culture. Every grocery store, every gym has a culture. Every fast food that has a culture, and Disneyland has a culture. And I go around and I talk about the Disney culture, and I always ask people, how many people in this room today know what they call a person that works at Disneyland.
They call them cast members.
Cast members, exactly. And everybody knows that. I've never given a seminar where somebody didn't know the answer to that. And also, what do they call a person that comes to the park?
A guest.
They're not called customers, right? They're called guests. What's interesting about that isn't that Disney does that, because we all have cultures, right? Is that you and thousands of other people know that, because Disney is very upfront with their culture. They want their employees to understand what they stand for, what the meaning of Disneyland is, why people come to the park, and what they're trying to achieve. And they imbue their employees with a culture. And even after a few years, you go back and you get cultural training again. And my experience at Whirlpool and what I learned is that we did the same thing. We worked very hard at creating a culture at Whirlpool. We did things like bring all of our staffs in. We talked to them about our history. We read them letters from years ago from the CEO that started the company. We talked about what our values are today, what's important to us, what our goals are, what we're trying to achieve. All those things help people understand what the meaning of this business is. And a lot of times it helps in leadership. And this is where the two are connected, because people have to make decisions. And oftentimes when you don't have the policy book in front of you, and which most of the time you don't, you can make it based on what would the culture tell us to do? What does the culture say about who and what we are? And so what I did is I obviously led the culture by my example, how I try to live my life and try to be in front of our employees. But I also taught our culture. Whirlpool's a Midwestern company with Midwestern values. As I said before, there's never a right way to do a wrong thing. We said that at Whirlpool. We want our people to believe that. And we want our customers who deal with us to know that we have a culture that says the same thing, that we are out there to help you grow your business along with ours as a partnership, not us try to take advantage of you or you try to take advantage of us. That's what culture is. And in a longer term, as you look at it, that's what it means, I think, for success in business.
So, Joe, you were with a Fortune 150 company, Whirlpool, where the culture was pretty much in place, and it was your job to reinforce that, to teach that, to lead by example. What about for somebody else, another individual that might work for a much smaller company than, say, Whirlpool, or they might even be self-employed? What advice would you give to somebody where they have to actually create the culture themselves?
Yeah, and that's a really important point. As you talk about culture, most organizations, especially smaller ones and even bigger ones, it's surprising the number of organizations that never talk about or reinforce the culture of their companies, like Disneyland does. But if you run a small business and you're interested in creating a culture, you have to take what's in your head and what you believe in, and you need to put it into a vision statement. This is what I believe in. This is what my company's about. This is what we're driving all of our behavior towards. I used to use a great example of a company in Upland that was a lighting company. And they had a vision. Matter of fact, he had it on the back behind his desk, and it said, in an effort to light up your life, which I thought was really cute, right?
You bet, sure.
We promise to provide the greatest quality products, as well as find a way to have you become a loyal customer, something like that. It was some kind of thing like that. That was his vision. He believed in that, and he drove all of his employees to that. He was the owner of this business was a former IBM serviceman. And he came in with the idea that that's what IBM did. And he brought that into this very small organization. He probably had 20 employees or so. And he drove people to say, we provide quality products and we do whatever it takes to make people want to return as a customer of ours. Let me tell you a story. I was at home one time at a very important meeting in San Francisco. And my wife, who runs a small landscape company, had a big job and had placed an order with this lighting company. They were delivering as I was getting ready to go to the airport, and I had to move my car to let them get into the garage, to put her product in the garage, the lighting product. I couldn't start my car, and I was going to be late for my flight if I couldn't start my car. I called my wife. I told her, I need you to come home. I found out she was an hour away. That wouldn't have worked because I wouldn't have made the flight. The guy who was delivering the product was listening to the conversation and the concern I had about missing this very important meeting. He said to me when I was all done with the conversation, I'll take you to the airport. And I said, no. I said, you don't have to. I said, it'll get you in trouble with your boss and it'll ruin your day in terms of deliveries. He said, no. He said, I think my boss would want me to take you to the airport. And he did. He drove me to the airport. He dropped me off in this big lighting truck. And on the way home, I had to have my wife pick me up because I didn't have a car. I said, I want to stop at the store. And we did. And I walk into the store, and here's his vision statement on the back of his wall. And I said, that's why the guy took me to the airport, because that's what the vision was. That's what this individual believed about what his business did. And everybody in his organization had in their head what he had in his head because he put it up visual. I tell people, make it known, your values, your beliefs, all those things that create culture. Let it be known to your employees, just like Disneyland does.
So again, that was a small business owner who borrowed a vision or a culture from a larger company like IBM, right. And that's where I'm going with this. Is if somebody's sitting there thinking, I don't know what my vision is. I'm providing this product or service. I need to create one. Maybe go to some of these various organizations, these larger organizations that they're either fans of or customers of, and borrow something from someone else and apply that to their particular organization.
Well, no doubt. We talked about Disneyland. Mm-hmm. I mean, why not create a culture in your store where the people that walk into your store are your guests and not customers, or your employees have some other title. It's okay to borrow cultures and look around and see what's successful. I always tell a great story about the Ritz-Carlton. It's one of my favorite stories. I was traveling one time where I had to stay at a Ritz-Carlton in Half Moon Bay. And I had to be up there. It was kind of a secret trip, and I was trying to keep a low profile so people wouldn't see me that knew me because it was a business meeting. And I won't tell you why I had to do that, but I had to do that.
I'm intrigued then.
Well, I ended up going down to the restaurant, and I have what a lot of people think are different eating habits. And I was sitting there trying to order off the menu, and the waiter came over and he said, "Can I help you?" And I said, "Yeah, I'd like if you could take what's up here in this dish and put it with what's down here in this dish." He looked at me and he said, "Hang on a second." And he walked off. I had no idea what he was doing. He came back, and the chef came out with him at a Ritz-Carlton. And the chef said, "I understand you're trying to find something to eat." He said, "What do you want to eat?" And I said, "Well, if you can take from what's up." He said, No. He said, "Give me the menu." And he grabbed it and pulled it out of my hands. And he said, "Just tell me what you want to eat." And I said, "Okay." So I described the dish that I would like to have that I make at home all the time. He said, "No problem." He went back and he fixed me probably one of my best travel meals of my career. Well, he came back out later and he said, "Well, how was it?" And I said, "It was great." And he said this, he said, "You know what?" He said, "Whenever you come up here again, just call ahead of time and tell us that you're coming, and we'll make sure we have all the ingredients for whatever you want." Well, I made the mistake of telling my wife about this, and from that point on, she insisted only at staying at Ritz-Carlton when we travel.
That's a tough life.
But here's the point. So I went to the Ritz-Carlton website to look up their vision statement, their mission statement, to understand what their culture was. See, if I wanted to create a culture for a business that I have, I would want to create a culture that created a customer like I became from that one experience. This is what they say. They say, "Ritz-Carlton is a place where genuine care and comfort of our guests is our highest mission." Okay, well, that's fine, right? But here's the point that got me. It went on to say, "We pledge to provide the finest personal service to our guests." Does it get more personal than the chef coming out?
What do you want to eat?
What do you want to eat? Exactly.
You customize the menu.
Now, but here's the real part. This is the part that really killed me, because this is what the employees of Ritz-Carlton do. This is the last part of their vision statement. "The Ritz-Carlton experience enlivens the senses, instills a feeling of well-being, and fulfills even the unexpressed wishes of our guests."
Wow,
now,
that's almost, that would seem like that's an impossible task.
But here I was, right? Mm-hmm. Sitting there saying, "Well, if you can do this and that." I didn't tell him what I wanted. He pulled it out of me, figured it out, and gave me a meal. And that's how you learn to do. You can see culture everywhere, and you could say, "I really like that part of it," and take segments from the Ritz-Carlton or Disneyland or from anybody and create a culture, I think, that really works in your store or business.
Well, Joe, I love how all of the topics of which you speak to various conventions and organizations and businesses around the country, they're all synergized, because as you're discussing how to create a high-performance culture within an organization, it really ties in with your customer service topic as well, too.
Yeah, and keep in mind that a vision statement, like I'm talking about with Ritz-Carlton, drives the customer service level. So having a statement that says, "This is what we do," allows that chef to say, "You know what? This is what he wants. I'm going to make it for him," and not have to question or be questioned by his boss to say, "Well, why did you go off the menu?" Have you ever been to a place that says, "We don't take substitutions"?
Yes.
Well, if you don't eat the way that restaurant fixes meals, then you're in trouble. But this place says, "We don't care. We're going to take care of you no matter what." It's like the guy taking me to the airport. It's amazing to go out of that box that we normally put employees in and let them do whatever they want, to take risks and to be better at what they do.
Well, you just gave a great example of how a high-performance culture can drive results, because you mentioned that with the Ritz-Carlton's mission or vision statement and how they applied that to you, you're now a loyal customer, as is your wife, right? So that's the result that every business is looking for, is a loyal repeat customer.
Right. And I always say the culture has outcomes. And whatever you put into a culture, whatever you create in a culture has outcomes with your employees down the road.
So in addition to creating a repeat customer and a loyal customer like the Ritz-Carlton did with you and your wife, what's another outcome one can expect by creating a high-performance culture within their organization?
Well, keep in mind that one of the reasons why culture is so important is because it drives behavior. When you have that vision statement on your board, your employees look at that, and that drives their behavior. They go to wherever you're telling them to go as the leader of an organization. That makes it the single most important attribute to success. Let me give you an example of Johnson & Johnson. I believe this was back in the mid-'80s when they had the Tylenol capsule, the tainted scare, where people died. I think 12 people died as a result of these capsules. I can remember the story because I remember reading about it. A young 14-year-old girl was the first one that died. They had no idea what happened. And then a boy died the next day. And then the young boy that died, his brother and his wife died as well when they took capsules from the same bottle that he died from, because they came to the family to mourn in Chicago. 3 people from one family died, and I think, like I said, it might have been a total between 7 or 12 people, something like that. What happened is that a reporter, when they were trying to figure out what happened, a reporter that was in Chicago heard that it was from these tainted capsules, and he called Johnson & Johnson in New York. And he said, would you like to comment on the fact that your capsules are killing people in Chicago? Well, they had no idea. And they got their CEO involved right away. Keep in mind that this was their most important product for Johnson & Johnson. Tylenol had a share of like 80% at the time. There was a dominant share. It was one of the contributors to their bottom line. The CEO got his staff together, 7 people, and they sat in a room, and he said, we have a serious problem, and we need to make a decision right now. Well, within just a few minutes, he put this vision statement on the board, and the vision statement said this: we believe our first responsibility is to doctors, nurses, and partners, to mothers and fathers, and to all others who use our product. That was their first responsibility. And he said, here we are. We've lost already a number of people in this community. What do we do? Well, within minutes, they made a $150 million decision, which was a lot more money back in that period than it is today, to remove every single bottle of Tylenol off of every single shelf in America. And they did. They put ads in newspaper. They ran ads on the radio telling people not to take Tylenol. You can only imagine what that would do to a brand, the strongest brand, pain relief brand in the industry. People later on came back and said it was that one decision that not only saved more lives, but also saved Tylenol, because Tylenol went from being a 60-70% player in terms of market share down to like 8%. And then it came right back. And today I think it's upwards of 38-39%, some number like that. But culture drives behavior, and behavior in some cases, in this case, they said that saved Johnson & Johnson. Had they not made that decision and more people died, they would have been gone. And that's how important culture is. And that's why you drive people to a vision and a mission statement you have about your business.
So sometimes it's that big sacrifice that needs to be made in order to maintain a culture and, of course, the integrity like we talked about in the leadership series.
Absolutely. Yeah. It drops down to integrity. Look what it says about Johnson & Johnson to the employees as well. This is what we believe in, and we act on what we believe in, and that drives behavior. Let me follow up with another one. You asked about culture being important. You remember CVS's decision recently to
take
eliminate
tobacco off the shelves, right?
Exactly, yeah. And it was a $2 billion decision. It was not a small thing. But they said, you know what? We're in the business of health. And if we're selling tobacco in our stores that's killing people, what does that say to our employees and to our customers? That's what they said on the news. And sure enough, they did that. And I don't know if you saw, I think it was either during the Super Bowl or recently, they're running ads now touting the fact that they are an environment where people come in and they get treated for their ailments and they don't sell things that cause death. And I think they set a great example for any organization to say, we do and act on what we believe in. And that's what CVS did. And I thought that was really a great statement to make.
So there might be some great initial cost to implementing the values of the culture one's trying to grow within an organization, but then long term, it looks like it's worked out for these big companies.
No doubt, and it's paid off for them. And if you think of Johnson & Johnson, they're one of the biggest companies in the world, and they made a decision years ago that kept them in business, and that's a very positive thing.
So, what are the characteristics of a high performance company culture, Joe? In other words, how do I know if I have created one for my own business? Is there a checklist to follow? What are some of the things that we, as small business owners and other leaders in various organizations, need to look at to kind of take inventory to see where we stand in developing a high performance culture?
There is, Tim, and we can put this up on the website as well.
You bet.
I actually have a list of them, and I go through them in the presentation I make. The number one thing, we've already talked about it, is mission clarity. Understanding what the mission of your organization is and the direction you're going in. No doubt the most important, and probably the thing that most organizations don't do, is they don't have a mission statement, a vision statement for their businesses. At Whirlpool, I actually created a different vision statement for my organization. I ran the sales team, the national sales team. I had my own vision statement separate from Whirlpool's. So you can do it within an organization and you can do it for a smaller organization. So mission clarity, make sure your people understand where you're going. The example we already talked about BMW, we build the ultimate driving machine. If that's what you believe in, make sure your people know that. The other ones that I think are really important are fully empowered employees. We touched on this in leadership, that a leader's job is to get people to take risks, to go out and make decisions, to see what happens in their world. They have to be empowered to do that. A lot of times in small businesses, people want to keep all the control. And that's the worst thing you can do. Employees are better when they feel like, gosh, I'm okay to go out and make a decision like the driver that took me to the airport. That's a good thing. People that feel empowered are better employees in the longer term. A high integrity workplace, another one we talked about. Nobody wants to work in an organization that's dishonest, that cheats customers. You want to work for a place that you can feel good about, that every day you're going out and making a difference. That's really an important part of a business. And I have other ones on here: highly effective leadership, performance-based compensation, a customer-focused organization. A lot of times we get focused internally. We can focus on our own problems, our own issues. We don't realize that we should be focused 100% on the customer, because that's what drives our revenue. That's what brings us, repeat business in the longer term. So there's another one as well. How far do you want me to go on these?
Let's keep going.
Keep going?
Yeah.
Okay.
And what we'll do is we'll put this list up in the show notes of the podcast as well for our listeners to download.
Okay, and it's broader than what I'm going to talk about because I'm skipping some of these. But
sure.
Another one I think is important is commitment to learning and education. I found that when we came into the recession, people really cut back on this area because it's easy to cut back on. You don't realize how important it is. But I've always believed in this sort of theory of intense learning. If you bring people in, speakers in, seminar leaders in to teach your organization about business, about your business, about parts of your business, whatever it is, that learning applies to that employee over the length of their career. I can still think back to some of the areas of learning I had when I was 22, 23 years old, early in my career at General Electric. That really changed me and gave me insight that helped me be a better business person and a better leader later on. So intense learning and education is really critical. Too easy to cut back on, I think. Great communication throughout the organization. I find this to be a really important part, that organizations that communicate often and directly really make for better organizations rather than ones that you're always wondering what's going on. If there's something new coming, you communicate it, you tell people there's a change. Employees are aware of it. They're kept abreast of things almost daily. I think that's probably more common today with the internet and things we get, but also it's common today as far too many rumors that get out. And oftentimes, if rumors get rampant in an organization, people will spend 30%, 50% of their day talking about the rumors and getting nothing done. So we know that as well. In all the reorganizations I did, we always tried to make sure that we were keeping people abreast as we made progress in a reorg to keep rumors from going on.
So honest, clear communications about the inner workings of what's going on within the organization, which is probably challenging, and you probably have to protect yourself legally in that situation as well, too. Would you not?
Absolutely.
That's a very delicate situation.
Absolutely, no doubt, especially in a big organization. And we were always very careful with that. And then demonstrated support for innovation. That's one that we don't think about quite often. But innovation in any business is really the hallmark of your success in the longer term, because you can't always just stay with what you do. If you do, you'll fail.
Yes. Especially nowadays with technology changing as quickly as it does, whether you're in a technology-based business or not, but just the way you use technology to communicate, get your message across, and enhance your product or service. And it's more of a challenge now for companies to keep up with that ever-changing.
No doubt.
Now,
I'm not just talking about technology. I'm talking about innovation within your business. If you're in the business, for example, like you're in, where you're doing one thing that you do really well and then you decide to jump out and do something else, you're saying to yourself, you know what? this is okay, but I need to broaden my base and be more than what I am. That's how you become successful in the longer term, is taking those chances and finding out what you're good at and growing your business across all segments of it. I mean, we used to be just be in the laundry room. We used to say that Whirlpool was a washer and dryer company, and we expanded into the kitchen. Then we got into the garage, and we broadened the base of what we do so that we could supply product across all parts of a house, not just in the kitchen or not just in the laundry room. It was that innovation. We would sit down and we would talk about, and I'm sure like you do in your business, what can we do that right now we're not thinking of that makes us better and brings more revenue into this business? And that's part of a talent that you need to bring to an organization as a leader to make them better. And good organizations and great cultures do that. And that's a high-performing culture. The other one I would say is having the people in the organization feel like they're important to that organization. We've seen, and I've given examples before in prior podcasts about this idea of MMFI, make me feel important, that we have no biological need to be important, but we have a very strong component in our psyche that makes us want to feel like we're important to somebody. We all have that feeling. And as a leader or a business owner, wherever you might be, if you can make the people in your organization feel important and feel that your culture supports that, your people will do that with their customers. They'll do that with other employees around the office. They'll be better teammates. They'll make their teams better. And I always tell organizations this: your people will only love your customers as much as you love them. If you make your people feel important, they'll make your customers feel important. And we've all had examples like that in any place where we go, where we see negativity, where you get really down about somebody in a store that says something that you just think, that's not the right way to speak to a customer like me that's in this store. We want people to feel important. We want our customers to be treated like they're important. And that's what happens in a great culture. So those are some of the characteristics I think that make up a great organization. And when you talk high performance, any one of those or anything I have on my list here will help you grow and be better at what you do.
And we will have that list available on our show notes as well, too, within the Quest for Quality podcast. Are there any examples of failing companies? Have you seen some examples of some companies that were going down the wrong path, made a shift, and are now thriving as a result of changing the culture within the company?
Well, absolutely. Keep in mind that my job was the national director of sales, and I visited businesses all over America, if not hundreds in my career, probably thousands in my career. And I watched every level of discourse that goes on in these businesses. Yeah, I've seen a lot of really bad management, and I've seen a lot of really deficient cultures. I would start with micromanaging. Nobody likes to be micromanaged. Nobody likes a boss that hovers over them all the time, telling them what to do and how they should act and how they should talk. People like to feel like they are competent, they can do their job, and if they're not, you should fire them and move on. You shouldn't stand over them and tell them what to do all day. The other thing I've seen is good news companies. Have you ever heard that expression? Companies that are always looking for only the good news. As the boss, don't tell me what's bad out there. I want to know what's happening that's good out there. Sometimes that can get you in trouble, because if you don't know what's going on, if people are coming to you for fear that if they tell you that there's some problem in the organization, like let's say that the shipping organization isn't doing its work, that can destroy a whole company. And I've seen that happen before. Companies and bosses should be open to all kinds of input from employees, whether it's good news or bad news. It's really a hallmark of listening and letting people express whatever they think their concerns are about business. As I said before, there isn't any one of us that gets through a day without a problem in our lives, and we need to make sure we're expressing that to our bosses. The other one is centralized decision making. If you run a big organization, like I said, I had literally people all over America out there working. If I had to make every decision myself in a central location, it can't work. It can't work because oftentimes I was in meetings, or I was traveling, or I was at a show, or whatever it might be. If you have 500 salespeople, you need them out there independently making decisions based on your culture and what you've taught them, not on the fact that you're going to make every decision. That's the worst thing I think can happen in a company. I talked about lack of honesty and integrity. That's a big one. I'm not going to go into that anymore because I think I've explained that. Another one I see is leadership through fear and intimidation, where bosses want to just intimidate people into doing whatever they want them to do. You don't retain employees for very long when you treat people like that. I've watched that happen in organizations. Little hope of advancement or lack of innovation, I think I talked about, and little investment in education, because people want education. People crave to be good at their jobs. They want to know that if they do something, you're going to help them be all-stars. And if you can impart that to your employees, there's no limit to what they can do. I think the only limitation that I tell audiences, the only limitation that you have in business is the quality of people that you can hire. The better quality people you hire, the more runway you have in a business to really be successful. If you can't, then you'll fail. And deficient cultures don't attract the best people, and that's a recipe for failure.
So, Joe, any final thoughts on creating a high-performance culture?
Well, I'd sum it up and say this, that if you run a business or you are working for a large corporation, do a few things. First of all, become a great communicator so you can communicate your vision. Write it down, put it in words, put it on a wall, put it on a piece of paper that you have everybody carry in their pockets. Make sure that people understand your vision and what you want to achieve. Put in a mission statement, and then drive your people to those goals. Make sure that you have an organization where everybody has a common set of values, a common set of beliefs about what your goal is and what you want to achieve. If you do those things, that your culture then will get out to your people. At that point, you begin to train on it like Disneyland does, like Ritz-Carlton does, which the biggest companies in our world do. That's why they're successful, because people understand their vision. It's not always just important that your people understand it. As we saw with Disneyland, it's important that your customers understand it. They'll embrace your culture if they can feel it and see it, and it impacts them every single day. If you're honest, if you're sincere, if you're empathetic, if you bring that to the business world every day, people react to that. And you'll have better customers that'll treat you well and be willing to help you out in any situation. So in the longer term, those are pretty simple rules, and that's where culture comes from. And it's the single most important thing you do in your business. And quite often, we don't do it. I say, let's start now. Let's begin now. It's never too late to create a culture in an organization.
Thank you, Joe. And that is exactly what Joe did as National Director of Sales for North America, creating, building, and cultivating a high-performance culture with Fortune 150 company Whirlpool. Now in his retirement, Joe, a convention keynote speaker on the topics of the American economy and the positive direction it's headed over the next 10 years, building healthy teams within an organization, customer service, leadership, and applicable to all of the above, like you just heard, building high-performance cultures. To check Joe's availability to come and speak at your upcoming event, visit qforqwithjoe.com. That's the letter Q, the number 4, the letter Q with Joe.com. Click Request Joe right there at the top of the page, and he'll reach back out to you. Thanks again for listening in. We'll catch you next time for another edition of the Quest for Quality with Joe podcast.